two stories remain as unbeatens collide for the title.
Could it get any more dramatic?
Jim Harbaugh and the Wolverines are looking to finish the mission, while Michael Penix Jr. and the Huskies hope to write their perfect ending.
The final chapter, and the stakes couldn't be higher.
A new playoff champion will be crowned. The College Football Playoff National Championship. Number 1 Michigan versus number 2 Washington. Monday at 7:30 Eastern on ESPN.
Hail Cheaters. Welcome to the Always Cheating Podcast. My name is Josh. I'm here with special guest Dave Weigner-Lodahl. Dave, how you doing?
Welcome back, everyone. Hey, Josh, how's everything going? How was your holidays, New Year's? You back in the swing of things?
Yeah, I am. I'm thriving as always. So that's I'm feeling good. I just found out that the Pistons are the Pistons. I'm just, I'm sports crazy, as everybody knows. No, I just found out that the Detroit Lions are playing the Rams in the playoffs, Dave. So that's been very fun. It was sort of, I took the
congratulations.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford returns. I sort of took advantage of the FA Cup weekend to unplug a little bit. After the. I know some people really like and I like the FA Cup. I'm not an FA Cup hater, but the third round is like still a little too. There's too many matches, right? It's spread across too many days. And also we've just had 4 game weeks compressed into about 2 weeks in terms of, fantasy in the Premier League. So it's usually like a good kind of reset for me. And so I watched a lot of football today. So how about you? Are you doing well?
American football. Football. That was it was a good American football. No, this pod will be a good re-entry, I think, for all of us. When you mentioned before that I might be on, after between the FA Cup break, I was like, ooh, I hope there's stuff to talk about. But I think there is a lot we can chat about. And I did watch a bit of the Newcastle-Sunderland match, a derby. Mm-hmm. That was not good football. But it was pretty compelling, I guess, just because, Sunderland till I die. I got that, in the back of my head. But Sunderland were never going to score in that game, but I did miss the Arsenal game today. We're going to talk about that and get everyone updated. So it's funny. I'm about re-entering into this too.
All of these clubs that I have like a tiny kind of sentimental connection to, there's Wrexham, of course, kind of like the new everybody's like beloved other club. Sunderland, because of Sunderland till I die. Wimbledon, I sort of like because this American writer John Green is like a Wimbledon co-owner. Even Leeds a little bit because there's this book called The Damn United that I read a few years ago about Leeds in the 70s. So we're actually kind of Brian Clough, and so maybe even like Forest a little bit because that's where he went afterwards. So it's all these little connections. It's part of what makes it fun. The rich tapestry of English football, Dave.
Absolutely. No, yeah. I'm going the other way on Wrexham. Screw Wrexham.
Yeah,
I hate them.
I know they're going to get Ted Lasso'd, right? They're going to get too popular, and everyone's going to turn on them. But they're still a league too. I mean, I feel like they've got a long way to climb before we can properly hate them. So we do have a lot of news. Obviously, the big news is that Gameweek 21 is now heading our way. It's heading our way earlier than we expected because they have just rescheduled the Luton-Burnley match. This is a match that was supposed to be played on Monday. So I guess a week from when you'll be hearing this pod. It's now going to be played on this Friday. So it's kind of nice, I guess. I always like a Friday afternoon game, especially one like this. I mean, this is a pretty pure watch, Dave, I'd say, in terms of the always cheating pure watch rankings. I'd say Luton hosting Burnley is like right up there at the top, especially with Kabore gone.
If nothing else, the always cheating PSA on the deadline date is like worth tuning in just for that. Because I had no idea it was Friday. I'm traveling that day.
Yeah.
So I 80% chance would have missed it if I didn't listen or be part of this pod today. So,
I know they just updated the fantasy website like an hour. When I was putting this running order together, it still wasn't together yet. So it's very much late breaking news, but yeah, very important because especially this week, I have 2 transfers. I'm still sort of sorting out what I'm going to do. Probably like most people listening, I feel like I basically am sitting on my hands until we have more Haaland news. If we have any Haaland news, which I guess I wanted to ask you too, before we kind of jump into all the news, longtime listeners will have heard Dave. You've been on the podcast several times before. Dave, you have something like, is it 5 top 10K finishes or something? I feel like you have a real, several top 10K finishes. Very experienced manager, longtime friend of the pod. How is your season, specifically this season, going so far? It feels like you've had a nice climb the last handful of weeks.
Yeah, I am in the Hall of Fame rankings of something. Once I repay for a scout, I'll learn my new ranking, but worth the price of admission maybe next year. No, I'm having a good year. I'm 300K, which is the new 30K.
Right. By the standards of this season,
days.
that's fantastic. Yeah.
That's how I literally think about it. I'm not even that. I'm sort of half joking, but I'm really not. That's really how I think about it these days, the way the game is. I obviously right where we want to be, and I'm very happy with that. So I'm not going to humble brag too much. But I will say it would have been sweet not to bench Palmer and be 150K today. But it's what have you done for me lately? So, but I'm happy, obviously, where I am.
Who would if you can go who went over him? Who slotted in?
It was Bowen,
Bowen,
Saka,
right? So I guess Bowen, I guess would have been the one who maybe would have been benched for him.
Yeah, and then I had a bit of a curse of the 2 transfers because I think I brought in Alvarez. That's right. So I played Alvarez as well. So if I did nothing, I would have played Palmer and had a weak bench. So again, the curse of 2 transfers.
Talked about it many times.
Yeah. We're never going to learn on that one, but that's just variance. So. I was really lagging this. I think I was overall 4 million at one point. Around game week 9, I was looking back. Had a lucky game week 9. I think I brought in Trippier. Captain Son had a very lucky 9. Then wild card 10. And I was very early on Bowen, Palmer, and Watkins. And that sort of coasted me to within top million. So it's been a smooth season. I've enjoyed... FPL, it's different, but I'm still enjoying it. I'm still engaged, still checking it quite a bit. And I'm, with all the new content out there, I've just accepted it and use it and listen to the shows I like. And it's almost less legwork nowadays. And that makes it more fun in some ways because you can just be more creative and less just rote time with a spreadsheet figuring stuff out because people are more giving you options. So it's more about how they say with AI music, it's going to be less about creating a new song, but here's 20 different sounds and select the one you like. So it's more about picking than it is creating a plan, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I think it does make sense. I think that, which I think has created a problem that at least I personally have had to work to solve, which is the too many inputs problem, right? Recommended transfers. Hub has ideas for me. FPL Review has ideas for me. Mikkel Talkbom's Charts has ideas for me. They do not always tell me. I have my own ideas, right? Sometimes my own ideas peek through, right? And I have all these sort of different inputs, and I have had to, because I enjoy filtering through that stuff as well, and I think it's fun, and I don't think it hurts the game because it brings. I mean, certainly in a big picture sense, it doesn't hurt the game. It helps the game. It brings more people in and brings kind of a baseline of competency. But I think that the adjustment for me has been okay. I'm just going to have to pick a couple of lanes here, right? And I because otherwise I'm going to lose sense of how I actually want to manage or play the season, right? Because I think frequently, just to pick 2 out here, I mean, Review and Mikkel, who are 2 people that I really enjoy, they often give me very different ideas for where I should kind of go with my moves. And if I just sort of, I don't know, it's then I'm sort of, I don't, but that to me is not, I want my own opinion to be part of it too, right? And so it's I have to figure out what I trust the most. And so I've kind of found that I like the Review style where they give you 9 different options, right? It's you can go this way, you can go this way, you can go this way, and then I could sort of not necessarily even. I would say most cases I don't take any of the options that they recommended, right? But just the thinking through of 9 different kind of options. And then you can sort of play it out, right? Okay, if I do this, then I can do this in this week, and this and that week. That is enough for me to kind of make my own decision. And so that's I would say I've been defaulting to Review more than anywhere else the last maybe 2 months or so. And I think it's helped me, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. I would, and I do the similar thing. I have like one or two analytics rankings, projection sites, and then one or two sort of planning, like Pros, I think is really good with like the planning and sort of that sort of thing. And then obviously you guys for like the football and like, sort of the grass takes a little bit, who's playing midfield that I didn't know about. I think could change things.
Sure.
So.
And I think our goal is also just to make sure that like it's still fun, right? Like that's sort of like in theory, the pod is like, it's like Monday morning, the games have just been played. I don't necessarily want on Monday at 9 a.m. like a very clearly defined plan for what I'm going to do this week. I just want like good vibes, and like sort of a discussion of what happened, over the last weekend, and maybe starting to think about what I want to do the following weekend.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. I didn't make this like a referendum on content once again, but I will say that like the analytics, like even and like the review team will tell you this is like even the top 20 or the difference between the 5th suggestion and the 99th suggestion is basically 0.
Yeah.
It's like a statistical.
It's a couple decimal points, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And if you're going between like FPL Hub and like Mikel, it's like this defender's 3.3 versus 3.0. Who should I start? Obviously it's just,
it's weighted averages and it's really,
So at the end of the day, you got to go with your gut, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
I agree.
No, I love talking about this big picture stuff, honestly. I think it's really interesting. I also think it's a serious question. I think for people who consume FPL content, what you have to like, what are you looking for, right? Like, and I think that's okay. I mean, I'll stop here. Well, I'll end in this note, but yeah, it's like, what am I going to go to each thing for, right? And like you said, if you go to Pros for planning, you go to whoever for strategy, whoever for for fun, and sort of solve all those, check all those boxes. All right, so let's get into actual news, though. So I mentioned the Luton Burnley match being rescheduled. The other big news, and for people who don't know, Dave is a Spurs supporter. Timo Werner is on a loan to buy deal. I don't know all the ins and outs of that. If that would happen, like this summer in theory, if they want him, but Timo Werner is joining. I presumably he's already joined, right? I don't know if he's like actually on the pitch yet for. I mean, like on the training pitch yet for Spurs. But,
I believe so. The news was he got in a call with Ange, or just decide within 20 seconds of the call. So there was a lot of jokes and memes about that.
Yeah.
My understanding it's basically a 0 risk contract, and I think that's pretty much the reaction from everyone. It's like, this is obviously 0 risk. Like expectations could not be lower.
Right.
If he just runs around and does like Richarlison type stuff, like that's fine. He's a body up there. We need bodies in January. So I'm excited. I mean, hey, if he does anything, what's the over under on goals for the year? 0.5, right? So if he does anything, I think that's great.
Yeah.
But that'd be a bonus to me.
Yeah. What has he done like this? So this year he's played in the Bundesliga 14 matches with 2 goals and 1 assist. But I don't know. It's hard. Maybe a little too like hard to say. Was he? Because he was back at he was at Leipzig, right? That's where he's.
Yes. Yeah. They said the chatter I heard was like, he wasn't lighting it up to say the least. Change of scenery. Maybe a new system and. Yeah, just run around, press, in the Ange system, and I think that's a good fit actually.
Yeah, and they're down a body, right? And they advanced the 4th round of the FA Cup too. So I agree. I think it's a low risk move. I think fantasy wise, he's off the table. He's like sub Darwin levels of frustration, right? Like we don't want to.
Well, I guess speaking of Darwin like that, do we have any guesses on price? He's gonna be like 7, right?
I think that's too high.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, are they going to classify him as a forward? Most likely, I guess.
Think so.
Yeah. So
you'd think so.
So I would say 6 million. I think it's going to be in the 6 to 6.5 range. I mean, he was never a 9. He started at 9, I think, when he joined in 2020, and he was never a 9 million player, right? He never played like one. So I don't know how, even with like. I know they often use like kind of like regression, and you like no one ever drops that much, but I think you've got to think of him as like an entirely new player on the pitch. So I don't know. I mean, it's actually an interesting question. How low would he have to be for me to consider taking a flyer on him?
He got my mind turned. I'm like, if he's 6, I'm like,
I think at 5,
we need the money. You know?
I think at 5.5, I might start considering it. That'd be kind of my range there.
Well, actually, you can't though, because everyone presumably will be just Haaland, Solanke, Watkins, right? With maybe Tony instead of.
Well, we'll see on Haaland, right? I mean, I don't really know. It's
starting 22. I mean, spoiler. I don't think I'm bringing in Haaland this week. It seems like not like.
I am starting to lean that way as well. Mostly because it's hard. We just don't know, right? And and I don't want to I feel like we could easily spend like a 30 minutes talking about Haaland on here, and then we'll have something more concrete in 4 days. So I want to be a little. I don't want to get too in depth on it. Like, hopefully we do get some news, but it's just hard to imagine. He hasn't played a match in almost a full month at this point. So, and then they play away to Newcastle, and even Newcastle's poor run of form, they are a strong team at home. Does he immediately start and play 90 minutes? Like, it seems a little hard to believe.
I feel like Pep is definitely the king of load management. I don't know, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, KDB just came off the bench, right? Although actually, interestingly, Doku did start, and he had been gone for about a month. So, but yeah, I think it's unlikely. I mean, the way it was described recently was that he has, it's just pain. It's pain on his ankle, or maybe it's like ankle foot, something like that. And he said just because he's such a gigantic guy, this is really the problem. He said if it was somebody. It was somebody like Phil Foden, so a much lighter frame, it wouldn't be so much of a problem. But for Haaland, it's just like incredibly painful. So that is like the kind of worry there. Is just that it's a kind of chronic problem for him, right? It's just something that's going to take him a long time to resolve, which fantasy wise is going to create a huge dilemma for us. If we're sort of debating also, like at 14 million is a pretty tough spot, right? To be sort of like debating what you're going to do. So I don't know. I think it's going to be sort of interesting to see what happens there. I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you though. I'm leaning towards not bringing him in, especially because bringing him in would require me to take a -4, right? So if I just sort of roll without a -4, it seems like possibly the smarter move there.
Yeah, same. We'll talk about more like details, but it seems like a -4 to properly distribute the funds too. So that's like sort of the extra piece that I'm not really feeling.
Yeah, and that just means I most likely I will get him in 22. So if I were to make 2 transfers this week, and I almost certainly will, because I have 3 players who've left for AFCON and Asian Cup. What I would likely do is just make 2 transfers that leave 7 million. Roughly, in my bank in order to fund a Haaland move without a hit in 22.
Yeah, that's right. I think we should definitely go through the midfield options, but I frankly, there's no one really above 7. Speaking of 7 million, there's no expensive midfield options even that are that tantalizing. So it shouldn't be that hard to do. But
I mean,
it depends if you have Bowen or not. I guess.
And this brings us to Bowen. He limps off. Or actually, I don't even limp. I mean, he went down with an injury right at the end of the match. I think they were playing Bristol City, and so it's a classic 75% flag kind of injury, right? Where we have absolutely no idea if he'll be okay, but because game week 21 is this kind of everybody gets a week rest game week for anyone who kind of checked out in FPL over the holidays. Game week 21 begins on Friday, January 12th, plays through that weekend, right? So half of the weekend is the first half of the game week 21 matches. And then the following weekend is the second half of FA Cup, or excuse me, game week 21 matches. So it's a really stretched out 2-week game week. And West Ham don't play until Sunday, January 24th. So literally 2 weeks from today. So there's a very good chance that Jared Bowen is completely fine in 2 weeks' time. However, if you don't have him in your squad yet, it makes things a little bit trickier, right? Whether you, maybe if your bench depth is decent, then it's less of an issue. But if you don't have great bench depth, then it makes him a little less appealing as a transfer option. But again, hopefully later on this week we get a little more information there. Let's see what else has happened this week. Arsenal lost again in a proper tailspin at this point, I think. When I said this on Twitter, people got a little annoyed with me, but I don't know what to say. I mean, it's not a great run, right? They don't look good. It's hard. Like it feels like feels like they need a forward, right? I mean, like, I don't know if the Ivan Toney thing is still, it feels like that has been kind of,
I think that was pretty squashed at this point.
Pretty squashed at
least that's the lip service. But
exactly. So I don't know. It feels like it could be a tough spot. And Gabriel Jesus now has this injury. Arteta said it was recurrence of this knee injury that's been bothering him for a while. So I think it's a tricky time for Arsenal. And I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here, but just because we're already talking about it, if you didn't have Saka, would he still be kind of at the top of your transfer list for midfielders?
Man, that's tough.
Yeah. Arsenal play Palace at home on Sunday, January 20th. So 13 days from today.
That's tough. Like, Saka feels to me like I'm in NFL fantasy brain now because we were talking about NFL before we started. But he's like the volume running back. We're like, well, he's going to get like 20 touches. But it's just like the vibes are off. The coach is, not really doing well. And it's just a pure numbers game because he's going to get in the positions and get the touches. There's still, a lot of talent in that team. But man, it doesn't feel good. No, like bringing him in. But
no, and in my case, it would lead to me being doubled up as well because I made one of those classic money saving moves where I got a player I didn't really want just because it made sense. So I have Odegaard now in my squad. So then I'd be kind of doubling up on Saka and Odegaard, which feels a little excessive.
Yeah, I don't love that.
Don't love that either.
I was checking out Odegaard when I was like looking at midfield options. I was like, who can I splurge a little and be like a fun punt? And it's just like, ooh, that punt is getting less fun by the game. But
it's getting less fun. I will admit, there's a part of me that isn't, kind of freaked out enough about Saka's ownership, right? And the fact that it's only going to keep climbing over the next handful of days to still consider him just as a kind of defensive maneuver. I mean, my team has enough kind of off the wall players as it is. It doesn't really bother me too much to be kind of to be a little template there. I mean, I think it's even not having like a super great season. I don't mind playing a little bit of defense, right? I think you have to, no matter where you are, kind of rank wise. So, and I also think he might be. I mean, if Bowen goes down, you could certainly make an argument that Saka is the best captain for Game Week 21 as well.
Yeah, I think he's still a priority play, and he ticks along. It's similar to Bowen; he just ticks along and just. Yeah. And I think there's going to be a lot of low scoring teams, game weeks this coming week. Yeah. So if to get a 6 or 8 is probably going to help you a lot too. So
all right.
I think it's still probably a priority, to be honest, even though
I know it's like, it's not fun. No, it's not fun. But sometimes those transfers that are not fun end up being the ones that kind of save your season or your game week, right? You're like, this is so boring. I don't want to do this. And then it ends up being great. And you kind of,
Yeah, I'm the king of, as you know, Josh, I'm the king of not galaxy braining on with FPL.
No, well,
and seems obvious. It's probably obvious for a reason.
It typically works, right? And I think the trick is to throw a few these are for me, like a few of Dave's guys. You got to throw them in the mix from time to time. All right. So one more piece of news is just that Doku and KDB are both back. Doku started. KDB came off the bench. Still no Haaland, didn't even make the 8 team. And so, I think we'll see about Haaland. I think that if he's confirmed back on the pitch, a lock to start this weekend. I don't know how we would know that, but let's say we do find that out. Then certainly Haaland would be at the top of my transfer list. But I just the moment it feels like we're not going to get anything concrete going into this weekend.
No, and without Son and Salah, you can make KDB work pretty easily. As a fun punt. He's not going to. I don't know if he's even going to play this game week, but starting maybe next game week 22. I'll say Mikel has him at 62 minutes. And even at only 60 minutes, he's a good value. So, he could be a fun couple week punt there.
I know. I wish he was a little cheaper, right? He's at 10.2. I guess that's not that much more than Saka, though, right?
No, I mean, but once you get rid of Salah, Salah and Son, you just have all the money. It's
1.2 million more than Saka. All right. Well, let's take a quick, actually, first of all, I want to just do a quick shout out to Patreon and everyone who supports the podcast on Patreon. A lot of fun things going on right there right now, Brandon. Wow, I just called you Brandon. Dave, I'm actually surprised it took me this long to call you Brandon. It's
I'm honored.
Jump right into it. Yeah,
but definitely be on the Discord. We had last shout out for NFL fantasy, maybe this pod, but we had a good NFL channel. It's been really fun meeting a lot of people and being in leagues this year. So if you're not in the Discord, there's a lot of good community out there.
I know. I think I was actually thinking about that recently, and how like when we do these little promotional things like, oh, come join us on Patreon and join the Discord community or whatever. And it always sounds kind of vague and sounds like we're really trying to pitch you on something that like you wouldn't really want to be a part of. But yeah, there's a fantasy NFL group that I'm part of too. That's been a lot of fun. There's the Beat the Average, not Your Average Cheater League, which started up its second version a couple of weeks ago. And the goal there is just to beat the average score in FPL every week, a seemingly easy concept that has been incredibly hard. So if you have a group of friends, by the way, and you are kind of stalled out right now and what you want to do, set up your own Beat the Average Cheater League, because it is super fun. You'll be shocked how quickly like half of your league will get knocked out of this thing. That's been a blast. And so that's been a lot of chatter. We're getting down to the wire a little bit on the Last Cheater Standing League, which is the knockout league. The lowest 2 scores, sometimes 3 scores, get knocked out every week. And of course, there's just regular FPL chatter. There's a film chat place, things like that. So anyway,
that's the 2 channels. To be completely honest, like the main FPL channel like is a little overwhelming for me sometimes, but I like lurking in the NFL and the films. It's like, hey, if someone's like really into FPL, they're probably smart and have some good film suggestions. So I do like that. And also shout out to the Global Team Pursuit League, where Boston has been crushing it this year. So happy to be part of that.
Global Team Pursuit. We also, there and more. Okay. I won't belabor this any further, but go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to support the podcast. Say thank you. It's a tough podcast ad market right now. Okay. I don't say that, we love Blue Wire. We love our network and they're doing their best, but it's just in general, it's a tough market. So if you want to support the cheaters, you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to say thank you. And we also do an extra podcast each week. That's been a little more chaotic recently because as many of you know, Brandon, regular co-host Brandon is moving to Canada, and he is literally he was able to go to the border, I think, on Friday and do it. And I'm sure they just drove up in their car, but I still had this image of them like huddled at the border, like the 2 of them in like these giant coats, like wind whipping all around them,
Well, plus they have the cat carrier, so they have like an extra life they had to take care of.
It seems so sad. There's the mental image is so lonely, but I think it was all fine. So they're finalizing that move. Brandon will be back. All fingers crossed a week from today. And just a quick thank you to our newest Patreon supporter, Rune Sandberg. So thank you to Rune. And once again, patreon.com/alwayscheating is where you can go. We'll take a quick break. We'll get back and we're going to talk about Gameweek 21.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. One of the things I love about Indeed is it makes hiring all in one place so easy and streamlined so I can spend more time on the rest of my business. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
This podcast is brought to you by AT&T Fiber with Authy. Whether you're into watching horror movies from your basement, watching sports from your backyard, or watching trashy reality shows from inside your car that's parked all the way in the driveway so no one in your family judges you, AT&T Fiber with All-Fi is the best way to watch whatever you want from wherever you are.
Get AT&T Fiber with All-Fi and add some Wi-Fi square footage to your house. Limited availability in select areas. Go to att.com/hypergig to check eligibility. Coverage requires extenders at additional charge.
Did you know at Kroger, shopping online with pickup and delivery is the same as shopping in-store? Same low prices, same personalized deals, same rewards, with no hidden fees or markups on your same family favorites, like Honeycrisp apples and pasta sauce. The only difference is you don't have to put on shoes. Start your cart today at Kroger.com. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Egg Life believes eating better should taste great, so they created the perfect wrap. Made with egg whites, never flour, Egg Life wraps have 5 grams of protein, less than 1 gram of carbs, and 0 compromises. Transform your favorite foods with a simple swap, from tacos and sandwiches to sweet treats. Egg Life wraps have the taste you love and the nutrition you need. So see ya, tortilla. And hello, Egg Life. Find the perfect wrap in the fridge at your local grocer.
All right, Dave, we're back. Game week 21 once again kicks off this Friday with Burnley hosting Luton. And opening question is, does the stretched game week affect your decision-making at all? It's a question from Brian. He says, how much should we worry about the length of the game week, such as little niggly training knocks, that we can't react to? So does it affect your strategy at all to have these game weeks, to have this game week stretched out over 2 weekends?
Well, thank goodness FPL doesn't have any late swapping. So once you set your team for the week, there's nothing you can do. So nothing we can do. But I will say, so I guess the implication is we'll have less information on some of these later games.
Yeah.
So there is more risk. So I'm looking at a very thin bench.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very much thinking at least have one person on the bench would be a nice to have, which is almost always the case anyways, but especially if you're not, especially with a week where you get less information, I think caution is good.
Yeah, I know. My bench looks very shaky, to be honest, now that I look at it. My first bench would be, Anthony Robinson away to Chelsea or Jamal Lascelles home to Man City. Those are exciting.
I have Lascelles too. I didn't even think is he going to be playing? Or?
I mean,
I assume
he might get some minutes. I mean, he came off the bench in the Liverpool match in Game Week 20.
Actually, a 1-pointer for City against City might actually be the optimal case.
Yeah, does that count as bench depth? I don't know. I guess I would probably start Anthony Robinson away to Chelsea, right? Like you could maybe see an attacking return, or I don't know, maybe in a clean sheet. Like Chelsea are just so mercurial, right? It's hard to say. I think the one thing it maybe changes for me is, and this is just my kind of, I guess it's my little version of make fantasy fun again, which is I do enjoy captaining a player who plays later in the week. It is not an especially strategic mode of playing, but it makes fantasy more fun for me. I would never do it if I had like a overwhelming desire to captain somebody. Like I'm not gonna override my own kind of logic here, but if I'm sort of really on the fence between 4 options, let's say, or just make it even simpler. Let's say I have two players that I both really like, and they're both heavily touted in the stats. Bookies odds have them heavily, they both seem like they're odds-on favorites or close to it, close to even money maybe to score. I will captain the player who plays later in the week, just because it's like a hope springs eternal, I guess, is sort of my thinking there. So with a 2-week game week, it makes me very disinclined to captain a player who plays the first weekend, because let's say I went with, Cole Palmer, and if Cole Palmer blanks on Saturday at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time, and then I have to go, I guess that would be 9 more days, like just sweating out everybody else's captain. That seems incredibly unfun to me. And I'm sort of willing to maybe like cash in a little bit of value, or maybe, the EV is sort of the phrase of the day today, but like I'm willing to cash in a little EV for like just enjoying fantasy a little bit more.
And we're basically flipping coins anyways. Right. And like, it is, like you said, it is kind of silly and obviously sort of more superstition, if you will. But actually but there is logic to it, because like you said, if you know yourself and you know it's going to take you out of the game, and you're protecting that part of your gameplay, that's actually like a smart play in some ways. If it, like you said, as long as obviously you're going through a logical process for elimination, and you're flipping coins at the end. But I think I like Palmer. I mean, also it's my emotional hedge for benching him, but maybe it.
Yeah.
But
the revenge captaincy. The I want to prove. I want to prove how wrong I was. I'm going to captain you.
Week. You think you're good? You think
exactly. Earn this? Yeah.
But I mean, Saka just does not have upside, and that to me is not fun.
Yeah.
And then Bowen obviously is a question mark.
Yeah.
Ish now. I think, obviously he's a hold at the very least, but I think I like the other, more out of the box options being TAA.
Right.
I think that's a problem. I mean, I'm obviously no one likes captaining defender too much, but I looked at the clean sheet odds, and it was only plus 200 money line. So that's only like 30 something % odds, which isn't really good.
Right.
Clean sheet.
No, not shocking.
Usually if you become a defender, you want like 50% close to.
Yeah.
So that's not great either. So I don't like the TAA play. Tony, I mean, that's just, having fun.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, what are you thinking then?
Well, I'm kind of thinking TAA, honestly. And I guess that's where, the Bowen situation, if Bowen looks like he's going to be okay, I think I still like Bowen for the Sheffield, playing Sheffield United. That also is one of the last matches of 21, scratches that itch a little bit. But I think Trent, if you just view him as a kind of just for his attacking potential, right? Corners, free kicks, possibly being asked to do a little more in Trent's absence, right? All of those things. I think the kind of, if we think of the odds of a clean sheet at like roughly 30%, what are the odds of an attacking return for Trent, right? I think it might be higher than 30%. I think it might be in the kind of 30 to 40% range. You don't think so? I don't know.
He's had one assist in the past 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks.
Is that right? I feel like he's done some things outside of he kind of created the own goal.
Well, I'm obviously the cutoff for that is right before his 2 mega hauls.
Right,
so
exactly.
Statistics will tell you anything you want, but that is a fact.
Yeah, and he's also looked really good, right? He picked up 3 bonus points in a match where he had a yellow card a couple of weeks ago. I know this as someone who just brought him in a couple of weeks ago, but
and also actually, I'm looking too. His X assists is like 0.2, 0.4, 0.4, 0.4, and he blanked all those weeks.
Yeah.
So and with an XG of 0.5, 0.2, 0.4. So definitely some negative variance there.
Yeah, but so an 8-pointer in a Burnley match where he didn't actually, technically get a return. So, okay, and here's a question. I don't really know. I don't actually have an answer to this, but, how correlated do we think, if at all, do we think that clean sheets and attacking returns are? I mean, to an extent, they probably are, right? Because if you are keeping a clean sheet, it probably means that you are having a fairly dominant. Now, granted, you might have like the occasional shootout, but like in general, if you have a clean sheet, you're going to be kind of dominating. You're going to be on the ball a lot. That probably makes it more likely that Trent has some kind of attack return, in him. But I do think that if you say the floor for a clean sheet in that Bournemouth match is 30%, or I don't know, I mean the floor, but the kind of like average, like typically like 3 out of 10 times you're going to get a clean sheet from Trent. And then you kind of are able to tack on at least some attacking returns when they don't get a clean sheet. Then you're looking at a return percentage of maybe 40+%. Does that make him a viable option? I don't know. I mean, obviously he might have the highest ceiling though, right? Because if he can get an attacking return and he can get a clean sheet, then obviously you're in that kind of 18-pointer range. And he might have one of the highest ceilings of any player that we could consider for game week 21. Again, this is assuming that Haaland is out. What about someone like Watkins away to Everton? Is that something, I haven't really heard anybody talk about him at all, or what about like another Liverpool midfielder, like taking a total flyer on someone like Diaz or Jota? Is that something? It feels a little too risky for me, but those are options.
Yeah, I mean, Jota. That's just you're just playing with fire. You're playing with fire there. I mean, that's like a really make fantasy fun. That's your first touchdown.
It's making fantasy too fun.
I mean, I'm going back to Mikel's table here. Credit where credit's due. He has predicted minutes is 50 for Jota. So I don't know what that's rough for a captain option. You don't love to see that for a captain option.
No,
but I mean, I mean, he could score as well. This is a pretty flat. I mean, we're talking, it's a pretty flat captain discussion. I don't think you can go too wrong really of any of those choices we mentioned.
And if Bournemouth are 70% to score in this match, then should Dominic Solanke be part of our conversation? I mean, at least he's home for this match. I mean, there's very few home options for game. It's kind of surprising, actually. I mean, of all of the squads that play at home, Arsenal are the only one, unless you're going full on Ivan Toney punt, which, good on you if you are. That does seem like kind of a fun thing to do. It's not something I plan to do necessarily, but I do think that it's unless there's like if there was like a massive injury, like if Ollie Watkins just suddenly was out for 4 months, right, and we found out tomorrow, then Ivan Toney would be very much on my radar. But as is, he's not. But of all the squads that play at home, the 10 matches, Arsenal at Palace, and that might be it. I mean, Newcastle are home, but they host Man City, so obviously that makes all of their assets pretty unappealing. Chelsea, Fulham as the other one, and that's so. Yeah, I mean, okay, so to sort of flip things around a little bit, if the last match of game week 21 was Chelsea Fulham, would I be kind of like, I'm going Cole Palmer, done and dusted, sort of wash my hands of it and be done? There's a decent chance that I would be.
I think that's where I'm going to land. But our discussion of TAA, he does have a good floor and good ceiling. I will say obviously would not fault anyone for doing that pick.
It might be, it might be the week for it. I mean, is there any edge? I don't know if there is or not. I can't decide. Like, it's not like you're not really in like a game theory scenario right now with game week 21, right? Because it's not like everyone is moving in one direction and you're going to be kind of like, I'm not even sure what the pick would be. Like, what is the template captain going to be for game week 21?
That's a good point. Yeah. It's like strategically, game theory wise, it's like, if it is more like dispersed, then you should pick maybe a safer option because then a lot of people will blank.
Yeah.
But I don't even know if that's true. Maybe there's just a lot of people get one return.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Does that mean we all default to Saka then? Right?
I know, right? I know. It's like by the end of the week, all the analytics FC is like, we all captain Saka and get our 6 points.
60% EO by the end of the week. I think it's possible.
I think strategically, there always is an edge to going off the map if they return. So yes, there is a strategic edge, but I think what you sort of said a minute ago was sort of interesting, though, right? I mean, if everyone is going all over the place and people are taking wild risks, it is the player with the highest floor the best option for game week 21. I think that is an interesting way to think about it. In which case, yes, it may very well be Saka because it just seems likely that he's going to get something out of that match, right? I think it's just because they've looked so poor the last couple of weeks. It's just hard to get excited about them. But I got a late game day late option for you. How about a possible transfer in Pascal Gross?
Ooh, I like that. So Brighton,
that's a floor.
That's a high floor play. Everybody is gone for Brighton. They might actually field 9 players, which would be great. I love the idea. Brighton
that's more touches.
That's more touches. Yeah, think about how many completed passes he can have. It's you might get 3 bonus on that alone. I think he's an interesting option. I'm not sure why I've been kind of Pascal Gross has just been off my radar all season, but I think I maybe have a little, because I feel like I had this with Solly March last year too, where Solly March. It's like January, February, I don't want to say March because it sounds like I'm making some kind of pun, but like, it took me quite a long time to get where I was like okay with March, right? Like as like and like seeing him as like a real option because I just had this sort of idea.
Same with Matoma, it's like so with the Brighton guys, it's just whiplash trying to like convince ourselves of who the pick is.
Yeah, do you remember actually we were in our group of friends, we were in New Orleans last year, and that was the match where I think Brighton scored like 9 goals in the match we were watching. It was like Sally March at a brace. Yeah. It was like an absolute like destruction. And I feel like that was the time when I was like, oh, okay, actually this like De Zerbi thing is really working. It feels like maybe it's starting to work again. I don't know. I mean, they 4 points in the last 6. I mean, that's encouraging. That's 7 from 9, I suppose. Yeah. But honestly, keeping that clean sheet in 20 was encouraging to me. I was like, okay, maybe they can actually, like, maybe they have figured out how to kind of solve a little bit of the chaos. And yeah, I mean, so Gross is on 3 goals and 6 assists in the season. He actually finished with 9 and 8 last year, which is a little higher than I realized. He had 17 total attacking returns last year in FPL. It's a little higher than I.
That's what I'm saying. He ticks a lot. He's a floor play.
Yeah, and they have a great run of fixtures too. I mean, that would be the appeal of someone like Gross is. You bring him in, and just looking ahead to the fixtures, you could honestly go until like mid-March without really having to worry about him, right? It's just a really solid run of fixtures, a lot of home matches. Some of the maybe competitors for points in that team are gone at Asian Cup and AFCON right now, so that possibly opens up even more room for him. So yeah, okay, I like the Gross pick. I honestly maybe like that just more as an actual transfer than I do as a captain option, but I'm glad that I'm glad you brought that up just as another idea for transfers. So yeah, I mean, speaking of midfields or midfield moves, I am in a position still where I have 3 players in my squad who are red flagged. I've taken all the price changes on the chin because I just don't want to do anything until we have more information.
I had an existential crisis when. I actually have a question for you. Do you have the alerts on your phone for all the price changes still?
No, do
you have the push alerts?
No, I don't. I just follow the FPL status account, and I guess I know when that updates, and so that's usually when I.
Okay, so I get the push alerts, which is probably bad mentally. But I was starting to get them after the game week and like a couple days after. I'm just like, wait a sec, should I be making transfers now? Like literally, I panicked. I started I was just like, look at all the sites. I was like, what should I be? Is there an obvious pick? And then I looked and I was like, I don't even know who I'd be bringing in. So I was like, you know what? Step away from the keyboard, take a breath.
Well, and Bowen was the obvious pick, and yet here we are. Bowen might be injured, right? I mean, we don't know. It's just too hard to say right now because they don't play for 2 weeks, but they might, right? I mean, like that's why you wait, right? Because it's like there's still matches to be played. There's a whole weekend of matches to be played, and anything can happen. So personally, I don't know. I think Mark Southerns has talked before about the early on in the season. That's when you really want to think about team value and maybe be a little more aggressive with hits and maybe worry about it less. I mean, obviously, just honestly, as people get as the engagement level drops, I think it's also less of a concern, right? Like you just don't get those like 0.3 in a week type rises.
No, the team value thing is they sort of nerfed it, and I'm not mad about it. Like first of all, all right, now I'm gonna get on the soapbox, the price changes should all be when the game updates. It shouldn't be this like every day, like middle, like random Tuesday when what is the point? Like who cares? Like it should just be when the game updates, in my opinion. But they basically nerfed it to a point where I don't even think it's hardly a factor. It is like when we wild card in X number of weeks, and you might be 0.1 off like the perfect team or whatever. But even then, I doubt it's even going to be that much of a factor.
That's true. I mean, honestly, I don't feel like I've been. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm the greatest judge because I'm not having a great season, but I don't feel like I've been stuck too often. I mean, I guess I did bring in Odegaard over Saka a couple of weeks ago, and that was maybe the first time that it really affected me. But that was also a game week where I brought in Trent, right? And so. I mean, so you're always going to be a little when you go for
you made your bet.
Yeah. It's like I have an 8.4 million defender, right? I'm sort of I've made a big move there. So yeah, I think, but just with all those midfielders out, I think that the Pascal Gross idea it makes a lot of sense. I think Saka, we've talked about already. There's just some arguments for him, just because honestly, even though he has been disappointing, you kind of have to look at his full career. You have to look at how important Arteta finds him to be, right? You got to look at X minutes. I mean, sort of tied that in X minutes is specifically tied in with how Arteta views him, right? Which is Arteta sees him as his kind of keystone player or whatever, right? It's like he needs to be on the pitch to make everything sort of click for Arsenal. And so I think from that lens, it's just like he's going to play in this match. He's probably going to play something close to the full 90 unless they're just like absolutely dominant. And then he might get taken off early. But if they're dominant and he's taken off early, that probably means he had some kind of attacking return. So, it feels like usually, or it's the reverse, right? And they're getting, I don't know. But even then, like, I mean, I think when that West Ham match, like he really offered nothing. I felt like even then, he stayed on the pitch the whole time. So yes, I like. I mean, again, we're not like breaking any serious ground here, but if Bowen is healthy, I like him. If Saka's healthy, I like him. I think the Pascal Gross makes a lot of sense. Man United. I'm not really interested in any of these kind of new.
Then we get the sort of the B tier, sort of like, and Daniel Brubaker. I'm in their same boat. I have Bowen, Saka, Palmer. So I'm looking. Then after, you have Eze,
right?
They have a bad fixture this week, right? They're City. Or
they're in the Arsenal match.
Oh, the Arsenal. Yeah. So that's gonna be a tougher one. And Elise's hurt, so presumably that's not good. Yeah. And then you get your, like you said, the punty options, like your Fodens, your Rashfords, your Richarlisons.
And even Foden's less fun because that Newcastle match, I mean, sure, like Man City in any given match can score 4 or 5 goals, but in general, I don't see that as being a match where Man City are going to score more than 2 goals, most likely, right? Especially the way they've been kind of playing this season. Something that's a more kind of controlled possession style. And so, I mean, what about Richarlison? I mean, is he somebody that you've considered? I mean, again, as a Spurs fan, like how do you see Richarlison fitting with Son gone?
I mean, they're just going to run around and do stuff. I think Richarlison's he's exceeded my expectations. He has twice as many goals as Gabriel Jesus this year. So, credit to him. So he's certainly not a bad pick. He's a solid pick, but it's similar to like when we were talking about like Saka captain. It's like, I assumed before looking at any numbers and started doing research, it's like, oh, we're all just going to transfer into Charleston, huh? That's what we're all doing? Because it's like, I'm like, I guess, like it's fine. It doesn't give me a lot of confidence, but it's certainly solid, and he definitely could nick a goal or, so I don't hate it, but I'm not like, it's not on my short list. I'll say that. I don't think.
I mean, I would say he's on my short list. Like, I think there's a kind of, maybe that I find his ceiling to be a little higher than like a Pascal Gross type, right? And so the real question for me is whether I have the stones to go Richarlison over someone like Saka, and that I'm a little less sure about. I would almost rather get Saka and then move Odegaard to Richarlison in a future game week. Like that feels like maybe the better move there. I just feel like in general, there's just some part of me that ultimately isn't quite willing to go totally off the map when I've got a really clear and logical transfer in front of me, right? Like it's just very hard for me to really ever properly throw caution to the wind. Maybe I'll do it like in a game week 38 or something like that. But just like this early on in the season when there's still a lot to play for, I still have 3 chips. I just don't really want to be in a position where there's some super high ownership player out there that I don't have in my squad already, right? That I can just get with 2 transfers.
Yeah, you're making me a little concerned. I was going to quickly look up what the odds that Spurs get 2 or more goals in this match, because that could certainly happen.
Yeah,
and that could sway my decision. It's. I mean, obviously, Andrew's going to go for it. I mean, we're not. So, yeah, you're talking me into it. I just I don't know. Maybe I just have like Richarlison,
Oh, I mean, you and Brandon both. I mean, Brandon would never, subscribe to a Richarlison transfer, but it doesn't feel urgent. I'll say that much. I do not see him as a game week 21 priority. I mean, the problem is if you don't get him right away, I mean, it's not like Son, has been transferred out of Spurs, right? I mean, so bringing in someone like Richarlison kind of only makes sense in a short window anyway, right? I don't sort of want him for more than several weeks. So if I kind of, it's like if I don't do it right away, what am I actually going to do it or not? I mean, I guess Spurs. Let's see. After the Man United match, they play. I think it's Brentford at home. And then
a revenge Everton away revenge match.
Yeah, revenge match. So, I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah. Sometimes those
a no celebration brace.
Yeah,
I could see that.
Yeah. Or he'll like get in his head and have a terrible match, right? I mean, I
wait, Richarlison getting his head?
I know, yeah,
wait,
exactly. That's what
we gotta back that up.
I feel like I'm talking you into Richarlison, you're talking me out of him. So I don't know. We'll see where I come down on him. It feels like a fun move, but very speculative.
I think I'm like the world's number one like Foden. I love to back some Foden, but I would rather have Richarlison than Foden. I think.
Ooh, so that's an interesting.
Maybe he is on my short list.
That's an interesting one.
I think he's on my short list. You're right.
Foden probably deserves a little more love, doesn't he? I mean, given how well he's been playing recently, he scored again today or this weekend. Did they play today or yesterday? I can't remember now, but scored. Foden scored again. He is probably in the form of his career. It's very affordable. Ownership is creeping up there a little bit as well. Not like must own him to cover other managers level, but I think he's like he was around 20% last week. It's like top 10K EO, and I wouldn't be surprised if he climbed up into like 30% by 21. So, if you're the kind of manager that
I will say the underlying numbers are not anything to write home about with Foden.
Yeah.
So maybe it was a little bit running hot against Sheffield.
And does KDB's return? I mean, people have talked about how that's going to hurt Alvarez, but that could hurt Foden as well, right? I mean, does Foden have as much freedom as he's had in the KDB or in Arteta's? Excuse me, not Arteta, in Pep's system when KDB is kind of back and pulling the strings? I'm not sure. Like it could. Although I also am not convinced that KDB is like starting every week levels of
no. But I do have an image of KDB just hitting through balls and diagonals to Foden on the wing. So I don't know.
I know. Well, this is part of me is like I wouldn't mind seeing Haaland out for a little bit longer. I mean, as somebody who has Alvarez on my squad cell, I'd love to see what happens when KDB and Alvarez play together and you have Alvarez as a lone forward. I mean, it feels like that would help Alvarez quite a lot. So, that'll make that Newcastle match be extremely interesting this weekend. All right, let's go to a few listener questions. Cruden Gold said, "Is it a dumb idea to just hold on to Salah and keep him on the bench? I feel like if I sell him, I will only be able to bring him back with a wild card, and I don't want to book that in too early." So, what do you think about just holding one of these AFCON Asia Cup players?
So this is an interesting one. And this is sort of what I did with Haaland recently, where I thought he might come back soon, play soon. Yeah. So I kept my powder dry for Haaland more than other people spread the money around. Yeah. In the off chance that I get an extra week of Haaland where most people don't, it was worth the risk. So I think it's a similar play here. There is a good chance that he is only missing 2 game weeks. Not likely, but it's a solid chance. So you could sort of gamble in a way and say, bench 2 weeks and then have him back, save 2 transfers. That could actually be a very cagey, I don't know if cagey is the right word, but it could be a very, it could work out.
Yeah. It's a gamble, right? Like it's because I mean, again, they are knockout tournaments. And even though Egypt are the favorites to win AFCON, it's not like they're, I know we're working a lot of gambling terminology into this podcast, but it's not.
Well, you get us in a room, it's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not like they're even money to win, right? I mean, they're still not. They're the favorites, but they're still, plus like they're still at best 35-40% chance to win the tournament, right? So it's and they have. And I'm not sure the last time they actually won AFCON. I know they made the finals a couple of years ago. So I do think that it's they could get knocked out. I just don't want to leave that much money in my bank and sort of like I think in general.
Well,
there's a I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like if it's only in 2 weeks, then it's fine. But I don't think that's like the right way to approach it. I think you've got to assume that he's out the maximum amount of weeks and assume that you can get covered. I just think in general there's a kind of managerial approach sometimes in fantasy and FPL that is a little too conservative, right? A little too much like I don't want to deal with this problem later, so I'm just gonna not make a decision at all. I'm just gonna kind of keep my powder dry, right? In order to
Well, that's what's interesting about this one is it's sort of being conservative and risky at the same time because I'd say here's the counter argument though. Like so number one, he might be out only 2 weeks. Right. Likely he's back in literally a month from now, Feb 6th, I think. So it's preposterous almost not to sell him. Yeah. But the argument for is you bench him for 3 weeks, and let's say you have someone decent on the bench. So my argument basically is, what are you doing with this $10 million?
Right.
What? Other than a KDB punt in a week, you can't even count on that. Yeah. Everyone's 7 or 8 million. You're not really missing out on the world here. If you need I need players. I need a 12 players.
That's part of it too. Can you field
the interested for
squad?
Me? But but maybe you have a Stupinan, right? And 3 other good
Douglas
defenders,
Luiz,
and
a couple.
And are those guys gonna get completely battered, outscored by Richarlison? Even I don't know, maybe not. Yeah. So that's the argument for. I think for the vast majority of people listening, it doesn't make sense to hold.
I also think I think he might be working from a false assumption too, which is that says I'll only be able to get him back with a wild card. Right. And I
don't agree. Yeah, that's you can get anyone back in 3 transfers.
Yeah, so exactly. And you're talking about all this extra money. I mean, you don't have to distribute that money evenly across your squad, right? You don't need to turn Salah into 3-8 million players across your midfield, right? You can sort of keep several million in your bank, right? And just sort of, I agree. Two or three transfers is all it's ever going to take. And we will have more clarity too, right? I mean, you can go without anybody for a week or two like this. If Haaland is back as of this weekend, he's not, I don't think, going to be heavily captained. I think unless we get really concrete news, he's not even going to be that heavily transferred in. Right. So I think the same will apply to Salah in 4 weeks. Right. It's Salah. I mean, we'll see what week he's back and we'll see who they play, when he's fully back. But you can probably get away with not having him for a week. Right. And the same with Son. I mean, let's just see. Let's see what happens there. So I don't know. I just think in general, I like the idea of playing the game week in front of you a little bit more. The game week in front of me, or maybe 1 or 2 weeks ahead, not worrying so much about 4 or 5 weeks from now because
I think that's right.
There's also so many injuries that happen too, right? That kind of open up cash or open up transfer possibilities. All right, 2 more questions. One comes from FPL Physical Therapist. This is a new one, a new question asker. He says, or she. Says what to do with Darwin Nunez. Seems like we should still wait with Haaland anyway, so maybe get another week of pain and go from there. So I can't remember, are you a Nunez owner, Dave?
Never.
Okay. Never.
Okay. Never. Yeah. No, I mean, that's atrocious. That's hot garbage. Okay. But I think, given what else we're dealing with, I assume it's probably a roll this week and figure it out later. But yeah, it's just forget. Maybe you double down and captain Trent and hope, you luck into a assist goal situation. But man, wow.
Just the sheer, sheer numbers. It's incredible that, just anyone who takes that many shots, eventually it's sometimes the ball is going to go in, right? Or it's going to get deflected and you're going to get an FPL assist, right? Even if it's not a proper assist, right? Game will credit you for an assist. So I think, yeah, I think you've got to just hold him. And I don't really know. I don't feel like I have a great sense, honestly, of how it's going to work without Salah. It's hard to even kind of compare it to the last time you went to AFCON because you had Sadio Mane, who at the time that Salah, actually, no, Mane left at that time as well. So in that case, it was kind of weird because you didn't have all these kind of replacement options yet, right? You didn't have Gakpo, Nunez. I guess it would have been just like Firmino and Jota. I honestly can't really remember, but so I think I'm really interested to see if I love Cody Gakpo. I love watching him play. I just hope that from like a kind of viewing standpoint that he gets some minutes and plays. But I think I don't know. It's really hard to say. I think Darwin, I wouldn't be. Okay. Here's where I come down, I guess, which is just that I wouldn't bring him in and I wouldn't take him out. Like if I had him, I'd keep him. If I didn't have him, I wouldn't bring him in. That's sort of where I am with him.
That's right. Yep. Agreed.
Great. All right. Last question here. And again, I'm going to disagree with the last part of this person's question. David Fox says, who could you see being a big point scorer in the second half of the season who hasn't had much game time so far? And then he adds, excluding Tony. But I think we should include Tony. Let's include Tony in this kind. I don't know if he's like he wants to punish Tony further, for his gambling discretions. I'm not sure, but who do we think could do something in the second half of the season? Maybe let's say it's either an injury or maybe they just haven't played well. I think that would be another interesting thing too. Like who is, just like who are, you can almost look in the game and like who are the highly owned players, right? Like who are the most highly owned players in fantasy that just have not done anything so far?
I think I will defend my fellow David here. I think he means excluding Tony because Tony's the chalk obvious answer to this question. So he's more interested in deep cuts. I think I have one for you, Josh.
Let's hear it.
He's a bit of an older friend.
Okay.
He's you know the name.
Yeah.
This team, you think, they're mostly were known for defense, but this year their offense is a little better.
Yeah. He's
been injured since October.
Okay.
But he's made a cameo last week.
Yeah.
His ownership's 1%.
Okay, let me see if I can guess.
He has some explosiveness in it. It's Pedro Neto.
Yes, I wondered if that's where you were going with that. I started to get. I was like, actually, I was trying to follow the offense, the attack being a little better was what finally made me think. Oh, I bet he's talking about Wolves here. Neto, that is an interesting one. I saw the end of game week 20, the Wolves match, because I wanted to see if I could sneak one bonus attacking return out of Huang before he left for the Asian Cup. And Neto came on the pitch with about 25 minutes to go, and he had tunnel vision. I mean, it was like see ball, shoot ball. See ball, ignore four teammates.
We love that in fantasy.
Exactly, we love that in fantasy. Exactly. No, selfishness is a wonderful quality in fantasy, and I could absolutely see him slotting into a wing spot with Huang out and getting some minutes. I think it's a really good pick. I like that a lot. I mean, what has he done so far? He's got one goal. God, does he have 8 assists on the season? That's incredible considering how long he's been out for.
He's only 5'6" too.
So he's
in the game.
5.6 million. Has missed half of the season and is still almost a double-digit assists on the season. So, wow, I love that one. Okay, I think that's great. I think Tony deserves a bit of talk though, because we haven't really talked about Tony on the pod for the entire season, right? Because he has been out the entire year. I think the suspension, I don't know how Brentford got this like kind of sweetheart deal, right? It was like he was suspended for a long time. They're like, you can actually start that at the end of this current season. It's like once they were like secure, it was like, yeah, why don't you just start the thing up in May or whatever. But I mean, Ivan Toney is not only do I love to watch him play, one of my favorite players to watch, one of my favorite forwards to watch, but he is coming out into a nice run of fixtures for Brentford, decent anyway. Had 20 goals last season, right? A 20 goal scorer. He's available in the FPL game for 7.9 million. So not a great price, admittedly. But you can get to it, right? And so I think that Ivan Toney can end up being one of the top scorers in the second half of the season for sure. And I guess you're right. Maybe that's why he was excluded, but it's worth noting that, right? Like if a player suddenly enters the fantasy game who could be one of the top scoring players in fantasy, that is something we have to like pay some attention to. And I think the worry is just that, or maybe my feeling, and I don't know if you agree with this, is I just want to see him play a couple of matches first before.
This is going to say, I have good news for fellow conservative managers, like if you play like me, and because this will obviously be his first match back.
Yep.
Then they play Spurs, who
probably a good match for him, to be
they have
honest.
Van de Ven, Romero back, Bencourt back, so their defense backline's going to better. They're not a sieve like they have been. Yep. And then they play City. So you have 3 weeks to monitor that before we really need to make a choice.
Fair.
Good news. Good news there. We can kind of sit back and enjoy the 3 weeks.
All right, that's fair. And let's just see. They have a double down the line. I mean, granted, it's away to Man City, but still, it's a double. They closed the season on a really high note. They Sheffield, Luton, Everton, Fulham, Bournemouth are 5 of their last 6 matches. So I think that he's going to be a real factor in fantasy over the next handful of weeks. I think the KDB is another obvious one, but one that we can think about a little bit too. Obviously, he's been injured. Basically, he played 22 minutes in the first match of the season, and that was it. After I don't really understand what happened there, because he got a severe hamstring injury, and then they kind of rushed him back for no reason, right? He kind of immediately got injured this entire half of the season.
Can I just recall one a comment you made on a recent podcast where you said, KDB, he seems like a normal, chill guy. I'm screaming in my headphones. I'm like, he's the most competitive psycho I've ever seen on the pitch. And you just made this whole comment like, he seems relaxed, maybe I was thinking, like normal guy. I'm like, what?
Maybe I self-identify as a normal guy, and I'm like a competitive psycho. So, it's hard to, we don't all, all profile, in a certain way. But no, doesn't he just seem like the kind of person you could like walk up to? Maybe you're at a Belgian beer bar or something, Dave, and you see KDB over in the corner, and you look over and he's reading I don't know, he's reading The North Woods, the new Daniel Mason novel, and
excellent novel. Good choice.
Excellent novel. And you look over and you say, hey, how's that book? And you just chat with him for like an hour, and football never once comes up. Doesn't he seem like that kind of guy that you could do that?
I think there was a big profile of him a few years ago where it seemed like famously he's not a big social guy.
Okay.
So he might not appreciate being approached by random folk.
Poke him with my finger then,
just soft approach. But he does seem but we do know he's a very thoughtful and very he remembers everyone, and he is a very thoughtful, nice guy for sure.
Well, maybe I just like him, we'll just leave it at that.
Who doesn't?
Yeah,
he's
who
great.
Doesn't like KDB?
Exactly. Great to have him back.
It is. It's great to have him back. I think there are a couple of Liverpool midfielders that could be interesting fantasy-wise. We just need one of them to actually emerge. Like, we have always had multiple options at Liverpool, right? Like multiple attacking players to consider. Jota has done a lot in limited minutes over the last couple of weeks, and we've actually seen that from him kind of all season. I mean, he's barely played all year, and he still has 5 goals and 4 assists, right? So it's a pretty solid season for Jota, given that he's missed something. I mean, he's barely I think he started like 4 matches all year for Liverpool, and so I think that he is somebody who, if he could have an extended healthy run, could be a really interesting player. He's 2 years removed from a 15-goal, 7-assist season. But Diaz is the other one, right? Who's had lots of family and injury stuff that sort of kept him from being a consistent option. At the beginning of the season, it looked like he was going to be that guy, right? He had a great start to the year. And so it'd be cool. Maybe this is more like, I just want it to happen more than I think it's actually going to, but it'd be cool if we could get another acceptable midfield attacking asset this season. That would be fun.
I think we need more than one.
Yeah.
I mean, Jota, it'd be great if he was an option. He's just like FPL heartburn to me. It's
totally.
just like, I don't know if I can go back.
It's kind of injury prone too. Will we ever see? It'd be interesting. I mean, I don't know if things ever got bad enough at Man United that they had a managerial change, then maybe those players. They've basically all been hugely disappointing, right? I mean, Rashford, 3 goals and 3 assists on the season. It's pretty disappointing. I mean, I finally got a start, I guess, in the Forest match, which I suppose is encouraging. But he's been disappointing. Bruno's been disappointing. So your boy Mason Mount, Dave, like he hasn't been able to do too much.
No, I always laugh at the Man United guys because again, Mikel's tables are great, but he just needs to redact like Man United because they're always near the top.
I
it's just like,
I know. We all learned eventually. I mean, Saka's turned into that player now too, right? There's like nothing. It's like he does everything but get FPL points recently, right? It's like he's
right.
Every underlying stat makes it look like. I mean, Jota's, I guess, or not Jota, but Darwin is in the same category, right? There's these sort of the underlying superstars, right? Who just haven't been able.
Bruno hasn't had a return in 7 weeks. That's
ridiculous. It's just I almost want to like see him go somewhere else. And just I don't know. I don't know. It's Man United fans don't want to hear that. He's a great player. I love Bruno too because he just plays so hard. But yeah, it's just been a really fantasy wise they've been just completely off the table.
I'll be with you, Josh. I'm optimistic. We'll have some options. We'll have midfield options.
We got options.
Coming weeks.
All right, good. All right. Well, on that note, wow, I almost did it again. Sorry, Dave. On that note, Dave, thank you for coming on the pod. Nice, clean, and easy this week. We'll be back on Thursday with another pod, a bonus pod for patrons. So hopefully we'll have some injury news and updates that we can share on that Thursday pod. Then Brandon is expected to be back on Sunday, in which time, because again, it'll be this stretched 2-week game week. We're going to do Kings of the Game Week. So all you Kings of the Game Week heads out there, is it just me, Dave? Do you like the Kings of the Game Week pods? Do you enjoy listening to them, or is that a Josh thing?
I think now with Brandon, with the move, your podcast is now international. You might have to have the Labatt's King of the Game Week.
The Molson.
Get some sponsors.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
Molson Ice like sponsorship.
Yeah, there's a sponsorship spot that's open up for somebody out there. All right, if you're creating some kind of fantasy app, or if you're making something in the fantasy space, or you're just listening and you work for a corporation and you want to sponsor Kings of the Game Week or want to do a weekly Kings of the Game Week section, look us up, let us know, and we'll make that happen. So Dave, thanks so much though for coming on the pod. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me as always.
Yeah.
Had fun.
Oh, good. And you can go to patreon.com/alwayscheating to support the cheaters and to get that extra podcast that I mentioned on Thursday and each Thursday or whenever the deadline, typically on Thursday anyway, throughout the season. And a quick thank you to all of our producer patrons. Mike DiPietro, he's part of that NFL league. Dave. Trevor Ingerson, our buddy Chris Howell, Babas Kuhn, Todd Byerly, Andy Portlock at FPL Merch. Speaking of content or physical content creators in his case, Kerry Swanson, Jefferson Turner, Buffalo Wild Mings. Just walked by a Buffalo Wild Wings earlier today, Dave, and I was thinking, if I didn't have my 7-year-old, I would love to just go in there and sit down for 4 hours, just look at my phone and drink beer and eat chicken fingers. It sounds amazing. It's like
hit the overtime button.
Yeah, it'd be great. Just sit by myself, ignore everybody. Bartenders come over to chat with me, and I'm just like KDB, just like silently want to be left alone. There's a lot of similarities between me and him. It's
I think you're just jealous. You want his
maybe
life.
I need to get a football and see if I've got the skills. Sam Shower, Caleb Robbie, Volker Paulson Kruger, Alex Holcomb, James Holland, you, Dave Weigner-Lodahl, Nick,
me,
you, yeah, that's right. Nick Wright, Lazarus Llanos, James Keatley, the Saint, Bob Fox, Craig Jackson, Shalin F. Kadakia, Terrence O'Donnell, Heath Cram, Thomas Tisloff, Noah and Louise. Noah, good to see you on the street a few days ago. I hadn't seen you in a while. Travis Grant, Linus Wennerstrom, Jesse Halstead. See, I don't do these producer thank yous very much, so I like to work in a little crowd work, as I go through them.
I think I like the addition. Yeah, this is good.
Yeah, Bruce Kerr, Brian Chin. I went on his podcast a couple of weeks ago. That was very fun. The Press Play podcast. Those guys were all fantastic. Blair Jacobson, great to see you in London. Dan Parsons, James C., Matthew Skinner, Fro Jacobson, Brennan, Daniel Hart, Lally, Ben Coombs, Eric Kite, and our newest producer patron, Gareth H. You can find the podcast at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, Acast. If you would write a review on one of those networks or more, you want one or more, that is really, really helpful to help us help people to find the podcast. You can follow us on Twitter /X, Instagram, Facebook. We're considering some other social networks, Dave. We'll see. You can also find the podcast on YouTube now. The podcast now available on YouTube. And you can email us with any questions. Maybe if you want to sponsor that Kings of the Game Week section, go to hailcheaters@gmail.com. Yeah, we didn't actually do that. Yeah, we needed we didn't come up with our X-Fun Player of the Week, did we? Brought to you by the hit movie Strays. Yeah, we totally forgot. All right, we'll save it for the Patreon pod. But you can visit the website alwayscheating.com to find out more. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you next week. Bye.